I worked at this big hardware store for 6 years. You know, the one where you supposedly save big money. It felt endless. But here's the thing. Here's the actual terror of it all. For the last 3 months, I've been pregnant. I'm almost out of time, and the fear is just overwhelming. I needed that new graphic design job. I needed to get out. That's why when a nightmare customer decided to snap at me on my last day, I knew I had to make his weekend project last for weeks. I walked a lot that morning, pushing carts through the empty aisles during my opening shift, trying to ignore the constant low-level nausea. I was in flooring, which meant I spent most days cutting carpet for people who had no idea what they actually needed. The job wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. I watched managers rotate through like we were some kind of training ground for people who didn't want to be there. Part-timers came and went. I stayed because it paid bills while I figured out what to do with my graphic design degree that was collecting dust. Then, in April, I finally got a real job, actual design work. I put in my 2 weeks and counted down every single shift. My new boss, a woman named Carol, had been so kind and flexible when I mentioned my situation, which only made me feel more guilty about my current life. Comment what you would do right now. Is it even worth the risk? My last day finally came. I had 4 hours left. The clock was crawling. I was cleaning up the carpet area, sweeping up the small, itchy fibers that always clung to the concrete floor, when I heard fingers snap behind me. Snap. Carpet! Now! I flinched, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet afternoon air. I turned around and there was Jared. Of course, it was Jared. Jared owned half the apartment buildings in town, and everyone knew he was garbage. He'd come in every few months, talk down to whoever helped him, buy the absolute cheapest carpet we had, and never tip. He just stood there, his expensive coat and polished shoes looking utterly out of place on the dusty sales floor, expecting me to jump. Me, on my final shift. And he had no clue about my secret, the massive life change hiding beneath my oversized apron. Look, I'm busy cleaning up my station, sir. If you wait 1 minute, I can help you. I said it calmly, too calmly, feeling the adrenaline already starting to spike. You're cleaning? You have customers to serve. That's your job, isn't it? He sneered, pointing a well-manicured finger to a massive roll of beige industrial-grade carpet. I need 12 rooms. Cheap stuff. Get it done. I have people waiting to install it this weekend. His tone, the complete dismissal of my humanity, the snapping fingers, it hit every last nerve. 6 years of working retail, and this guy was going to be my final memory? The final insult before I finally escaped this place? My mind went cold, absolutely clear. This was it. The last act of rebellion before my new, calm life began. He wanted cheap carpet for 12 rooms? Fine. I would give him exactly what he paid for, and then some. I grabbed the order pad and scribbled down the details as he rattled them off. 22 strips, each 12 feet long. He bought the cheapest, thinnest, most easily damaged carpet in the store, the kind that frayed if you looked at it wrong. I went to work on the colossal cutter. Whir, slice, stop. The saw was loud, the room smelled like cheap plastic and glue, and I just kept thinking about my future, my new job, and the reality of becoming a mother. That constant, low-grade fear of failure was my fuel. I had the key to his frustration. The one thing that makes carpet unusable is if the strips are not all running in the same direction. Carpet has a subtle nap, a direction the fibers lean. If you install 2 strips with the nap facing opposite ways, it creates a visible line, a noticeable difference in color and texture. It looks absolutely wrong, almost like a checkerboard pattern where it should be seamless. Amateurs miss it, professionals never do, and Jared, the cheapskate, always hired the cheapest installers, the guys who were fast but sloppy. I finished the first 6 strips running lengthwise, pulling them neatly away from the roll. Then I turned the massive roll, using all my strength to wrestle the heavy cylinder, just slightly. I cut the next 6 strips with the nap now running perpendicular to the first set. Then I turned it again, giving my arms a rest before the final push. The final 10 strips were cut running the same way as the first 6. I worked quickly, making sure the cuts were perfect, but the orientation was a disaster. I mixed them all up, stacking them on the loading cart innocently. He wouldn't know until his installers laid it all out. When they did, they would find 22 strips that looked like 3 completely different carpets. They'd have to tear it all out, send it back, and wait for a fresh order. That weekend project? It's now 3 weeks of delays, wasted labor, and a massive headache for the great Jared. I handed him the rolls, my face blank. "Have a great weekend, sir. Enjoy your carpet." He just grunted, pulled out his phone, and walked off, leaving the cart for the loader. The moment the door closed behind him, I felt a rush, a terrifying, beautiful release. But then the panic set in, cold and sharp. Did I just risk everything? The new job? The baby? I still had 4 hours left, and I had to keep my composure. I had to get through this last shift. I had to get home, clean up, and start my new life. I walked back toward the break room to clean up and found myself facing a massive, gleaming security camera, the red light staring right at me. I made it through the rest of the day in a cold sweat, every noise making me jump, every manager walking by making me brace for a confrontation. But nothing happened. I was finally clocking out, tapping my employee number into the keypad for the very last time, when my coworker Mike pulled me aside. Mike was an older guy, totally harmless, and always wore this look of perpetual confusion. He looked pale now, genuinely shaken. "Hey, you can't leave yet," he whispered, his eyes darting around the employee lounge. "Listen, I was in the back just now, stacking the vinyl rolls, and I saw something on the security footage." My stomach dropped like a stone. They knew. "Saw what, Mike?" "I was just cutting carpet for Jared. What did you see?" He shook his head slowly, his confusion deepening into something like genuine fright. "It wasn't that. Not really. It was how you did it. You were focused. You were fast. But the thing is, I checked the inventory after you left. That roll of cheap carpet, the big one you cut for Jared, it was already 2 feet too short before you even touched it." The statement hung in the air, a completely absurd technical impossibility. My mind raced. 2 feet short, 22 12-foot strips. That shouldn't have been possible. There should have been a massive length discrepancy. Jared would have noticed immediately. I would have had to tell him. It was a technical impossibility that suggested I had broken the laws of physics, or perhaps in my blind rage for revenge, I had completely hallucinated the inventory, leading to massive, immediate consequences. "What are you talking about, Mike? I measured everything perfectly. You're insane. You're dreaming," I stammered, trying to sound authoritative but feeling utterly unhinged. Mike leaned in closer, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, and asked the chilling question that delivered the first major twist. "How did you cut the impossible length of carpet when the roll was 2 feet too short?" I didn't have an answer. I just stared at him, my mouth dry. I took a stumbling step back, needing to escape, needing air, but I never got a chance to leave. Right at that moment, a man walked out of the store manager's office. He was wearing an expensive suit, just like Jared, but younger, maybe late 20s, with the exact same arrogant set to his jaw and the same calculating eyes. The store manager, Mr. Henderson, was beaming, his hand on the younger man's shoulder. "Ah, there you are," Mr. Henderson said to me, completely oblivious to my terror. "Good timing. This is our new assistant manager, and he'll be stepping in to oversee the entire flooring department starting next week. He's taking over your role, essentially, but with a title bump." The younger man turned and smiled, a chillingly familiar, predatory smile, and that's when the second fear hit me. The one that makes my blood run cold even now, the terrifying confirmation of a terrible coincidence. I was pregnant, and Jared owned half the apartment buildings, and this new manager replacing me, the one now overseeing my old domain, looked exactly like Jared's son. I could only stand there frozen, the feeling of the keypad under my fingers the only thing tethering me to reality. The revenge I had savored only moments ago, the subtle, brilliant act of sabotage, suddenly felt like the most idiotic mistake of my life. I hadn't just ruined Jared's weekend. I had, potentially, created a professional enemy who was now replacing me, now had access to my history, and now had a motivation to check the security footage for anything suspicious. My head was spinning with the logical impossibility Mike had presented. Was I so tunnel-visioned on getting back at Jared that I had misread the numbers, miscalculated the inventory, and just been impossibly lucky that the customer didn't notice the massive discrepancy? Or had Mike, in his confusion, simply been wrong about the initial measurement? I forced a smile that felt like a painful grimace and shook the young man's hand. "Welcome aboard," I managed to say, my voice sounding strained and high-pitched. He just nodded, his eyes lingering on me for a moment that felt far too long, too calculating. I fled the store a moment later, the bell over the exit door sounding like a final, mocking alarm. The fear I carried on the drive home wasn't just about the revenge anymore. It was about what came next. The old retail world was supposed to be completely cut off, a closed chapter. Now it had a terrifying, entitled new connection to my new life. Jared's son, with his father's features, now held my old keys. What if Jared's installers, when they discovered the carpet sabotage, connected the dots back to my last shift? What if Jared, using his massive influence in town, found out about my new job? The sheer paranoia of it all was exhausting. I was supposed to be relieved. I was supposed to be starting a new, peaceful chapter of my life as a designer and a mother, but instead I was in a low-grade panic, wondering when the other shoe would drop. The thing about retail revenge is that it's satisfying in the moment, a burst of righteous anger that feels like justice, but the fear of consequence is a slow poison. I never heard anything about the carpet. The impossibility of the cut was never explained, and I tried desperately to forget the whole thing. But every time my phone rings, every time I see a number I don't recognize, the panic flares up. I keep working, focusing on my new graphic design job, trying to build a new life. But I can't shake the feeling that I didn't actually escape. I just delayed the confrontation. I have to wonder, did I commit the perfect crime and only my coworker noticed the impossible math? Or did I start a war on my last day? A war that Jared's son is now perfectly positioned to finish? It's a terrifying question. Subscribe for more shocking Reddit stories, and tell me, what would you have done to get revenge on a customer like Jared?